mental health as a young woman and self-esteem because she was always in fear. And how many of you know about that? How many of y'all can relate to that? That so many of us live in fear of everything. Fear of, fear of what white folks are going to do, fear of losing your job, fear of financial insecurity, fear of being alone, fear of, like that whole concept of that whole conversation about dying alone, which I hated that conversation because I'm like, why are we talking about people dying alone? That's not fun. That's all linked to fear, right? So a lot of us live in fear. And one thing we talked about when we talk about wealth and investing every single morning is we talk about how fear is absolutely the worst thing to use to make your decisions. If you make all your decisions out of fear, it's very, very hard to accomplish anything, especially financially, because most investing involves the ability to take on calculated risk. It involves the ability to stay cool in tough situations. It involves the ability to look at the big picture. It involves consciousness. You must have consciousness to overcome fear. And consciousness is really an important concept in my mind because it was consciousness that allowed me to say goodbye to my mother and to not feel like I left a whole bunch of stuff on the table. I didn't feel like there were things that were left unsaid because I had consciously been thinking about this for 30 years. When I was 20 years old, I got this fake thing called a dream job at General Electric, GE Aircraft Engines Division. That was back when GE was a great company. And when I went to go take this dream job, making all this money, I heard this song by Alita Adams. Tell me if you've heard this song. The chorus is like everything must change. Anybody heard that? I'm not gonna sing it. I'm a terrible singer. And nothing stays the same. Everyone will change. Nothing stays the same. The young become the old. And then she says, mysteries do unfold, because that's the way of time, right? And that was a deep song for me because the thing about finances and wealth is that people don't understand is that time, and we've discussed this a little bit. Time is huge in wealth. In all the mathematical equations we would do in grad school and when I was teaching at Syracuse to understand wealth and how it grows, time was the number one variable. So time is powerful. Time is not just money. Time is more valuable than money. Time is wealth. So if you have a newborn baby in your life, I don't know how many of y'all got kids under 10, but if you got children, they're very wealthy. Your children are wealthy until we strip the wealth away from them. They're wealthy because they have time, right? Time, 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 time. I'm telling you. For example, like when I tell you little things like I say, well, if you'd invested $1,000 or $1,800 in Apple stock in 1997, you'd have $4.2 million today. Well, that's the power of time. Like how in the hell does $1,800 turn into 4.2 million? It's time, 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 time. But remember, because I've meditated on these things for many, many years, I taught my first finance class when I was 22 at the University of Kentucky. It was 30 years ago. Um, for me, time is so much deeper than just compound interest, right? But time is the secret ingredient of compound interest. Time is the wealth driver of the world. Time is what makes a little bit of money turn into a lot of money. So what you want to do really when you talk about wealth, you think about wealth is you don't want to waste time. So I got this thing called a dream job with GE aircraft engines. It was terrible. I had this manager. Her name was Mary, and she was really mean, and I hated the job. And I made a lot of money, but I mean, I go to work and I'd be bored, and it was terrible. But it was a transformative summer, so I heard this song. And when I heard this song about time and everything changing, I started imagining, oh my God, my parents are going to be gone one day. We're going to get old. Things are going to change. So I just called my mother and I was kind of crying. I was like, I just want y'all to know how much I love you. And I'm blobbering on the phone. And what kind of happened then at the age of 20 was I became very, very extremely, extremely time conscious, even more so than I already was. And that really was critical in my ability to make investments in my life, not just financial investments. Not just most of the most important investments you make in your life are not going to involve money. The biggest investments you make in your life involve things like people. They involve your health. And if you want to know why America's in a crisis state right now, if you want to know why millions of people can't afford to retire, if you want to know why millions of people are struggling financially, if you want to know why millions of people are miserable, it's because we were never really taught how to properly invest our time, right? So I encourage you, like as you start your day, and you've been blessed with the gift of time. My mother ran out of time. Then I want you to really think about what am I going to do with this gift? You know, it with this money in the time bank that I get every single morning. What am I going to do with that? What am I going to do with this 8,760 hours that I'm blessed with this year in 2025? Invest that time. And if you got children, invest that time for them. Make those little investments in the stock market consistently. That will ensure. See, here's the thing that's interesting about wealth is it's really easy for me to tell you how to make your child a millionaire. I mean, it's not even hard. It's not like that's like first grader um discussion for someone like me because again, you get a PhD, you study everything. And so I've seen all the different ways money can be represented and so making your child a millionaire is like 2 plus 2. It's not even algebra. It's like it's arithmetic. Um, and if you're not sure what to do, I did a training on it. You go to kiddyboss.com, KIDDIE, kiddyboss.com. The training's called How to Turn Your Child into a Millionaire. It's a very simple process. Do it, and your children are going to be fine. Um, what is really more interesting to me is okay, and then what? And then also, how do you sort of make sure that it's done in the right way and that it's that the context of your wealth is one that allows you to see all the value that exists in your life, right? So as I said goodbye to my mother, it's like, okay, you know what, mama, we did not waste time. There's nothing left for me to say to you because I said it 20 years ago. You know I love you. You know I always did my best to show up for you. Now it's kind of crunch time in the basketball game. Now we're getting toward the end. Now I got to really show up as your son. I'm going to make sure I do this. I mean, I gave this little 10-minute speech. You know, I said I'm going to do this for mama. I'm going to do it the right way. And then at that point, it's a matter of building the legacy long term. But the good thing I could say is like we didn't waste our time. We invested in each other. And I even spoke about, and I've told you all this story, and I like to sometimes share the story. I hope it's okay for those that to understand how wealth and family kind of connect. So I talked about how my mother made that decision to give birth to me when she could have easily ran down to the clinic and just made me into Black history if she wanted to. She could have just said, you know, I don't want to deal with this baby. This is because a lack of consciousness might have led her to say, look, I'm not thinking about 5 years from now. I'm thinking about right now. Right now, if I get rid of this child, my life will be easier. My mama won't get mad at me. I won't have to deal with the stress of the embarrassment of being a teen mother, right? And but instead, she made that decision to go to a type of consciousness where she gave me to God. That's what she literally said. She said, "I gave you to God." I got up and I went up to the altar and I told God, "I can't take care of this baby. I'm handing him to you." And so I really am a child of God. That's what I really am. I don't even go to church, but I know I'm a child of God. So I don't need to go to church to prove that. The pastor ain't gonna tell me that. God told me that. But anyway, that investment, I circled back and I said, so in my mother's life, after we got through the hard stuff and the challenges, you know, raising me, spending all that time, investing thousands of hours, feeding me every day and guiding me and everything else, well, for the next 40, 50 years, I was a pretty good blessing in her life. She never wanted for anything. When I had money, mama had money. I got my first job. When my first job was making 6 figures. At that point on, if she wanted to take a trip, she never would have to pay for it unless she wanted to. If she needed to pay off the house was paid off. If you want a new car, sure, mama, what can I do? You want to go on a cruise? Sure, mama, let's do that. Right. And so that is what you call in finance a return on investment. That's an ROI. See, I really need you to never ever make the mistake of thinking that your return on investment can only come when you're investing money. Because if you do that, you're missing all the other forms of wealth that you can invest. Some of you are raising kids. Some of you have 4, 5, 6 kids eating up all the food, you know, spending all this money on daycare. But if you guide the investment and you manage the assets properly, those assets can yield massive dividends for you later on in life that will differentiate you from other people. My sister, my mother, my sister, when we were little, my sister and I had two friends that we spent a lot of time with. Both of those friends unfortunately ended up getting hooked on drugs, and my parents made a decision to separate us when we were about eighth or ninth grade because they kind of saw where things were going and they did not want us in a bad space. So and I'm not disrespecting them at all. I don't I'm not here to do that, but that's what happened. Well, later on, my mother worked to support my sister as she went to medical school, and she dropped out. It was too hard, and then encouraged her to go back. And so she became a medical doctor. Well, in my mother's last days, again, talking about full circle, talking about return on investment, in my mother's last days, the medical doctor that was right next to her, feeding her, helping her in any way she needed, make sure she had what she needed, was my sister. My sister was right there with her, monitoring all her vitals up until her last breath. And had my mother made a different decision, right? If she'd made a different decision 30, 40 years ago, if she'd said, kids are a pain in the butt. I'm gonna go party. I'm gonna drop this baby off down at the orphanage so I can go to the club. Because I want to be a city girl. I want to live my best life, whatever it is. Then that would have been a different outcome. She would have been maybe sitting laying in their bed by herself. Who knows, right? Same thing is true even when you talk about marriage. My mother and father had a 50-year marriage, and it was actually kind of poetic how it ended because they literally had their 50th wedding anniversary a month before my mother passed. It was like the timing was just impeccable, right? It's like we're gonna hold on to the 50th, and it was hard. It was not politically correct. It was one of these marriages that probably wouldn't survive the modern internet age where everybody's popping balloons on each other and men are talking crazy about women and women are talking crazy about men. That marriage wouldn't have lasted in this environment because by every measure, my father was simping for my mother. They sometimes use the word simp. When you love a woman and you treat her well, they call you a simp. But my daddy would have been called a simp, and my mother would have been called a pick me, the term that hateful women use toward women who treat men well, who want to make their relationship work, who sacrifice their ego for the relationship. They're called pick me's. Well, my mother would have been called a pick me. My father would have been called a simp, and so the best thing that they did in terms of being able to make that marriage last was they ignored the world. They didn't care what you thought about their relationship. They didn't care what other people thought about what they were doing and how they were doing it. They didn't care about other people's opinions. And they lived in they created their own space and managed it properly. And that allowed them to have a 50-year marriage. Why is that important? Well, when you get older, when you get past about the age of 60, 65, and you start having those medical issues, well, having that partner next to you is a big deal. That person that you dumped 20 years ago because, maybe the sex wasn't good enough or they were mean to you on a Tuesday or you just saw something that you thought was a red flag so you walked away. In your mind, you're thinking, gosh, I really should have held on to that person because right now I could really use somebody. Maybe instead, I put my politics above my preferences and above my life choices. I let other people make choices for me. And now those other people are not here to take the consequences of those choices with me. See, people will tell you all day what your choice should be, but they are never around when you experience the consequences. Tell me if you agree with what I'm saying. I'm diverging a little bit. I'm gonna circle this back to wealth and investing. I promise you, it links back to financial concepts. Every piece of this does. So don't think that I'm just talking about any and everything. Yeah, people all day will just tell you, "Oh yeah, you should do this. A girl, you need to get rid of him. A man, that girl's whack. You need to go do whatever." Right? But those people are never around when the consequences come knocking. And uh, and this is the conversation that doesn't get heard because it's not flashy and appealing on the internet. The internet conversations are very exciting, very interesting, but when you're really talking about real life stuff, um, I can just tell you, I saw them deal with real life stuff, and it's not what people portray it to be. So in the end, my mother and father were there for each other as they both got sick and old, and I personally think that they would consider that to be a good investment. So those three investments, my mother's investment in me, the man who paid off the house, my mother's investment in my sister, the medical doctor who took care of her till her last breath. My brother's is amazing as well. I don't want to bore you with too much of that, but he's doing quite well. He can pay some bills himself, and then also her investment in my father, and my father's investment in my mother, and their investment in us, and our investment in them becomes that full circle ecosystem that you need in the black family. That's a full circle ecosystem that gets lost in a world that would love to see you as a single mother struggling to pay bills, falling behind on everything, lonely as hell while you are barely getting by, or as a single man sitting in the stroke ward at 52 years old because you thought you were going to be young forever and not having anybody around to even check on you. And so I would encourage you as you're making your life investments, you're making the investments in your life, be careful about letting politics shape how you structure your portfolio. And I say portfolio because portfolio is in finance, a portfolio. It's not just a bunch of stocks and bonds and real estate. Yes, that's a financial portfolio. A portfolio is any collection of assets that you have in your possession that are valuable to you. A big chunk of your portfolio is um, a big chunk of your portfolio is it involves your relationships with other people. A big chunk of your portfolio involves your health. Think about how often we don't work on our mental and physical health. I mean, just think about this for a minute about how we will work harder. We will give more energy to pleasing a company that cares nothing about us than we will put into taking care of our own family. We put more energy into the corporation than we put into our own mental health. You up here running around just crazy and frazzled and stressed out and don't even have basic simple coping skills other than drugs or alcohol, which they're glad to give you a drug. They're glad to give you a pill because they can make money from that, and they're glad to sell you liquor. They're happy to sell you liquor. Liquor is the ultimate coping mechanism for millions of people. And did y'all notice that the Surgeon General is about to put a warning out to talk about the link between alcohol and cancer? I'm really sensitive to cancer right now. That's what got my mama. That's what got my grandma. A lot of y'all got. How many of y'all give me? How many of y'all got somebody in your family that went down from cancer? Everybody's getting cancer. Cancer is like everywhere, right? They talk all day about COVID. COVID was there. I know it was there, but it didn't scare me to be honest with you. Cancer, it's like, oh man. Like, and if you've ever seen somebody die of cancer, it's like, oh God, no, right? So they said that the three leading factors that cause cancer the most are alcohol, tobacco, and what was the third one? Oh gosh, there was one more. I can't remember what the third one was. I know it was alcohol, tobacco, and something else. And I know a lot of the processed foods and all that, right? So here's the deal, right? When you talk about a portfolio, I don't want you to ever think maybe it was sugar. There we go. I think sugar. There, yeah, sugar. Oh God, sugar is terrible. Um, but so when you talk about a portfolio, one thing about portfolio theory and finance, when we study portfolios on a high theoretical level, we use heavy mathematics, even some degrees of quantum mechanics kick in when you talk about high level financial theory. One thing about a portfolio is that uh, the way you manage a portfolio, it comes down to how the new asset that you acquire, how the new investments you make fit in to investments that you already have. Meaning that if I'm a real estate person and you bring a real estate deal to me, it may be a good deal, but I may say this is not the deal for me because I'm not diversified enough. I'm too deep in real estate. I need to go buy some stock. Or maybe if you bring to me some sort of small business that's in some sort of industry that I don't want to work in, that I'm not skilled in, but it's a great money making opportunity, I may pass on that because I may say, this business venture idea that you have is a great idea, but it's going to take a lot of my time. I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of energy. I just don't want to do it because it's going to disrupt my quality of life and it's going to take away time that I want to spend with my son because my relationship with my son is an asset in my portfolio. I call it God's portfolio. God's portfolio means you were born wealthy, and whether you know it or not, everybody was born wealthy. And I can mathematically prove to you why you were born wealthy if you ever want to hear it one day. I'm not going to do it right now. But literally, in God's portfolio, a lot of people, I think that because we have an obsession with money and we're taught to believe money is the be all end all, money is not just the thing everybody craves and everybody needs. And I understand that because money can be restricted if we're not trained on money, things like that. But also, money the relentless pursuit of money disrupts other parts of your portfolio that you didn't even know existed. For example, I want you to think about how many people you know who spent so much time chasing money that they ruined their marriage. So that you invested in the job, but you didn't invest in your relationship. Now you're a wealthy single man, but you're spending all your money in divorce court or on alimony and child support payments anyway. So it don't really matter that much. Right? Or maybe you're a woman and you invested so much in your career that your relationship fell apart or your kids don't talk to you. Or maybe I want you to think about how many people you know. Give me a yes if you know somebody who spent so much time working that their physical health deteriorated. They became obese. So you're this obese person who's 52 years old working like a field slave, literally doing everything you can to give yourself a heart attack, and you're not sort of connecting. Nobody connected the dots for you. That time you spend going to the gym in the morning is also just as important a part of your investment strategy as the time you spend at that office. And that balance is something that I don't think is discussed very much because there's nothing profitable about teaching Americans how to have balance. Americans are not taught to be balanced people. We're taught to work until we die. That's it. You're taught to work hard, pay bills, and then die. That's your job. That's it. That's what they train you. And if your consciousness is low, then that's exactly what you're going to do. I want you to think about how many people you know who literally worked, paid a bunch of bills, and then died. Didn't leave like a massive inheritance or anything. Didn't have a fulfilling life. Didn't have a very rich experience here because they spent most of their time at their job. And that's kind of conditioning. I think in the capitalist machines work more efficiently when you minimize the consciousness of the individuals that are the inputs to the machine. Like if I run a farm for KFC and my job is to raise chickens so they can be fat and juicy and I can get them on the truck and get them to the restaurants. I don't really want the chickens to like spend time figuring out what their purpose is on life in life. Or I don't want the chickens to have consciousness. I need my chickens to have as little consciousness as possible because once they start sitting back and reflecting, like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on here, man? Why are you asking me to go put my head inside that little machine? Like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to go to college or whatever. I want to have kids and a family, and like chickens don't have much consciousness, right? So to some extent, capitalism does that to human beings. The goal is to keep your consciousness as low as possible, so you're not asking questions, not looking around, not trying to figure out how things work, so they can just get you into the meat grinder of capitalism. Where they work you until you're dead, and then they're making money from you the entire time because the number one goal is to maximize those quarterly reports for the corporation. So I encourage you think when you think about investing, look at that bigger picture, and that'll really go a long way. And so when I think about my mother and my father and the weekend that we had, it was very deep, of course. I mean, it's a funeral. I feel like, okay, what's the investing strategy here, and how do we invest in each other, and just what does that look like? Because here's the thing, that if you do it right, the money part takes care of itself. The money does come up because money is essential. Money is the lifeblood of our economy. It's hard to get by. It's hard to be completely fulfilled without having the ability to make money. And money matters. Money is extremely important. I would compare money to like being a football player. At my mother's funeral, I saw one of my friends, Tony, from when I was a little kid, and I remember Tony had these gigantic calf muscles, and he had a 48-inch vertical leap, and he ran the 40-yard dash in 4.3 seconds, which was absolute torture for me. If you know anything about football, you know that that's a hell of an athlete, right? And I didn't realize he was a hell of an athlete. I just thought that I was slow. I was like, man, I can't keep up with this guy, and he keeps jumping over me every time we play basketball. But anyway, so I'm talking to Tony, and he had told me about he tried out for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't think he made the team, but it's okay. Just the fact that you were on the field with these athletes was pretty amazing. And anyway, with Tony, the thing about him being a great football player is that his speed and his athletic ability was really important. It was essential to him being a great player, but it's not enough. It's like in mathematics, they have what they call a necessary condition, though not sufficient condition. Necessary means you need to have it, but sufficient means that it's enough to get you over the hump to help you achieve the goal. And so money is a necessary condition for most people to be able to function in this society. It's critical to have enough money. A lot of people crave money and end up worshiping money because they don't have enough money. It's like a vitamin deficiency. If you're deficient of vitamin of iron, then your body's going to show the symptoms of an iron deficiency, and you're going to crave food that has iron in it, like steak or whatever, right? But money alone, only low vibrational. I'm not making fun of anybody, but the only way you get to the point where you think money is everything and that money is all that matters, or money makes the decision for you, is if you haven't really spent the time sort of elevating the consciousness a little bit to really understand that money is a necessary condition, though not sufficient. So if someone says, um, I want to be with that person because they have money, what's happening is they're responding so much to the deficiency that they've actually taken something that is a necessary condition and they've made it sufficient, right? So rather than saying I like this person because they are, one thing I like about them is that they have money. I think that's perfectly fine, but it's not fine to say that's the one thing that makes me want them the most. Do you follow what I'm saying? Right? So if I look at a woman and I say, let's say I like a certain body part, booties or something, right? And I say I pick my wife because I like her booty. Like that makes no sense at all. Because she's a wife. A wife has to be many things other than just a big walking booty going around the house. That's not all she is, right? And so ultimately, I think that lack of sort of consciousness, which might come with some critical thinking, is it and it should be encouraged. I think that when we sit our kids down, this is why we should educate our own kids. I think if we sit our kids down and say, hey, come on, let's think about this, let's process this. I think that really goes a long way, and I encourage you to do that with your kids. Talk to them, have conversations about life, and we were talking to our kids and explaining relationships. After the funeral, I told our girls are gorgeous, and our son is a really handsome guy. He's 6'9", super smart, and a good looking dude, and I said, yeah, but you got to remember, a lot of people pick their relationships based on people that are the best looking, right? They'll want to be with somebody who looks good on their arm. And I said, there's a point about 44 to 45 years old where people just aren't as cute as they used to be, right? Some cuter than others, right? The big one is exercise. I found that people who exercise when they're in their 30s can look good in their 40s and 50s. People who don't exercise and eat bad food, oh, you're going downhill after about 42, 43 years old. People from college won't even recognize you anymore. So I think that getting into the gym makes a massive difference. But still, even then though, when you're in that 25-year marriage, it's not just held together just because somebody's cute, right? But those things matter a lot when you're in your 20s and stuff like that. So making those investments in people does require a consciousness where you can say, okay, I know how I would make this decision as a 24-year-old, but how would I make this decision as a 44-year-old? How would I make this decision as a 54-year-old? How would I make this decision as a 64-year-old? And I think that the ability to do that is something that can be taught. I think it makes a big difference in terms of how you make decisions. And when it's not taught, I think that's where people make a lot of mistakes, right? Because people change, and then they're like, "Oh, but this isn't what I signed up for." Um, so anyway, let me circle back to some financial stuff really quick, just to kind of make sure you don't think I'm just talking about any and everything. I like to talk about money in the context of life. One thing I'll say is when you're talking about another thing that came to mind actually as we were sort of dealing with working through my mother's passing and sending her off to heaven because I know she's in heaven. That's the only place she could be. She talked about her Jesus all the time, and that's why I choose to believe that she is. Um, is one thing that was really great was that there was nothing really financial to think about in terms of the preparation. I although paying for stuff was not an issue, it never came up. There's never a conversation like, oh, we need you to write a check for this or write a check for that. Everything had been covered because for many, many years, my parents were all about the insurance and the pension plans and they just kind of did all that, right? So that reduced the stress of the funeral because there was nothing financial to worry about. Her last wishes, everything had been kind of laid out properly, so it was a very smooth process. So if you think about this though, think about how many times someone passes and it's not smooth. It's very messy. It's very ugly, very crazy, right? It's not just crazy because of the financial stuff, right? Bills aren't paid. You got to go pass around a collection plate. You got to put a GoFundMe out to, on Facebook. That I'm gonna tell you the truth. That's embarrassing. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that's very embarrassing. And because things like life insurance don't cost a lot of money, Aisha Verzi's in the chat, by the way. Y'all can talk to Aisha if you want to talk about stuff like that. Aisha is a big supporter of the Black Business School, so we love Aisha. So talk to Aisha in the chat. Aisha, you can share your information if you want to. Um, but that's bad, right? That's a habit that we got to get rid of. But then the other thing that I thought about too is if you think about how many times there are funerals where there are kids popping up and they're like, "Oh, you didn't know I'm your sister," but no one ever talked about me because daddy was dipping his penis in every woman within a 100-mile radius. And it just then that kind of becomes a messy thing too. Or just relatives. having these disputes that I was so grateful. I was like, it's so good that I get along with everybody that's here because I don't know how I would feel sitting here in this heavy emotional situation with somebody that I want to fight, right? Just somebody that did me dirty, somebody that, and that's now I did go through that a little bit. I had a good friend named Greg Wilkins who got murdered when we were 25 years old. He got killed right after Tupac. I'll never forget him because he was my best buddy. And it was in Louisville, Kentucky, not far from where Breonna Taylor was killed, actually. And Greg, I remember being at the funeral and it was tough because we were trying to figure out who killed him and why and whose fault it was. And so there were different factions of the family because somehow I think it linked to the brother of his girlfriend at the time, and it just kind of became complex and messy. And those complexities never go away. Even 20, 30 something, 30 years later, it's still kind of a conversation topic that's very touchy. And I would almost say that this really speaks to when you talk like how do you live your life? I think some people live their lives very messy, and we forget little basic things like the kids grow up. So you got babies splattered everywhere, and then they all grow up and they start going back and they start hitting the replay button, like almost like a football game. They hit the replay button and they start looking back at, okay, how do we get here? How do we get to the point where I don't even know who my siblings are because you were out here doing this and doing that and doing the other, or mama ran through so many different boyfriends through the years that I thought were my daddy, that now I'm very confused. And so, again, consciousness, I think, comes in when you talk about having structure in terms of how you make those investments, how you make those investments in people, how you make those investments in your future, how you invest your seed. I think it's smart for a man to see his seed as an investment, right? I can create a human being from this. This is going to benefit me if I do it properly. But if I'm irresponsible with it, or if I adopt bad culture, then those investments are going to become liabilities. All those things that could be assets turn into liabilities. And then also it disrupts my legacy in a horrible way. It has my children looking at me crazy, not respecting me, thinking, okay, daddy had no discipline, daddy had no structure, mama had no discipline. Mama's sex addiction led to her putting herself in all these crazy situations. So now we got a bunch of different baby daddies and everything else. And that's where investments in things like therapy can be really important because people who go to therapy, who actually get so that therapeutic help to deal with their issues, they're not as prone to get caught up in the destructive addictions that exist in our society. Gambling addictions, drug addictions, alcohol addictions, sex addictions, things like that. If you ever watch a show like remember that show? I don't know if it was called Love and Hip Hop. It's like a reality show. On shows like Love and Hip Hop, it's really interesting. There's a consistent theme I noticed that there are a lot of kids who are living chaotic lives. I'm talking about like 28, 29 years old, living crazy chaotic lives who have parents that were either in prison or on drugs or both. And so now they're older, they're like 30. Now mama's old. Now mama ain't running the streets no more. So mama's trying to make amends. Mama's trying to fix and apologize and everything else. And it's just really sad to watch because there's so much chaos, so much destruction that happens. And it makes me very sad that we allowed people to do this to our community, that we are okay with that. I get furious when I see music where we're glorifying the drug dealers and all that. You're not an enemy to the black community. You're worse than the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan could never have done as much damage to black people as you do. You are a racist, a complete racist, because you've done this thing to our people, and people somehow celebrate that. But it's very interesting. And here's the thing: it flips into, it flips right into wealth. It lands right in the pockets of wealth. There's no study. Any study you find anywhere on wealth and the connection between wealth and family finds that the communities that have stable families have the most wealth, period. Indians are great at it. Indians are all about the family. They even do arranged marriages. Like, you ain't gonna go marry somebody just because the sex is good. We're gonna set this up for you because we're gonna protect you from yourself. And that requires a culture that where there's a sort of a respect for a hierarchy of decision making. It doesn't always feel good. It's not always fun. And somehow I think that the big one of the biggest liabilities we've been fed as black people is that everything has to be fun, everything has to feel good. And then if it don't feel good and it ain't fun, don't do it. Well, if that's your rule for life, that everything that you do has to feel good and be fun or be hilarious, because that's why we love our comedians and all that, then you're pretty much operating as a child. You're operating as a child, but you're also operating in a space that's devoid of any form of discipline. Do you understand what I'm saying? When there's no discipline, that means there is no sacrifice. There's no understanding of a basic, simple idea of success and wealth, which is that in order for you to have something in the future, you got to sacrifice today. In order for you to have a harvest, you must plant a seed. If you plant no seed, there'll be no harvest. Period. Stop thinking there's a damn shortcut. White people ain't gonna give you the shortcut. Stop thinking that you can just trick off your life and make a bunch of crazy, reckless, ridiculous, dumb, short-sighted decisions, and those things are gonna turn out okay. They are not gonna turn out okay. It's not gonna be good for you. You're going to be in a bad, bad, bad situation. So if your emotions and what feels good are driving every choice you make, if I eat food because it tastes good, if I'm sleeping with him, with her or him or whatever because it feels good, if I am spending money at the mall because it feels good and it makes me cool in the moment, guess what? I'm gonna be broke. I'm going to have diseases. I'm going to have babies' mamas. I'm going to have busted relationships. I'm going to be lonely. I'm going to be struggling. I'm going to get diabetes, heart disease, cancer, every disease, you name it. All these things are going to happen to me because I lacked consciousness in terms of how I made my choices. I lack consciousness and lack discipline. Consciousness is the ability to see the big picture. Discipline is the ability to make a sacrifice. So the question I ask anybody in here, and I could probably talk to you for 10 minutes and know if you're ever going to have wealth or not, is the question I would ask you is, are you a person that has consciousness and discipline? A conscious person that is disciplined is almost always going to be more successful than an unconscious, undisciplined person. Because a conscious, disciplined person is operating here, an unconscious, undisciplined person is down here in the basement, kind of operating like an animal. Animals do that. That's what animals do. Animals can't see the future. Animals don't think about the big picture. Animals aren't thinking about consequences, right? Animals are just living. They're just going from one thing to the next. So be mindful of that. Specifically speaking on wealth. Now remember, whenever I say wealth, I want you to never forget. Whenever I say wealth, I'm not saying I'm not talking about just money. So, but let's talk about wealth because sometimes people get confused. They hear me talking about everything. They think I just ramble about stuff. No, no, I'm talking about wealth. Wealth is not created by accident. Wealth has a certain structure. Wealth is a structure that is devoid of something that is called in science, it's called entropy. Entropy is basically chaos. Entropy happens naturally in the universe. It happens in some cases just with the passage of time. Stuff gets messier. Entropy is like if I take this pen, I throw it across the wall, across the room, it's going to land on the floor. If I take this cup of coffee and I throw it against the wall, the cup's going to splatter and the coffee is going to be everywhere. So here's the thing. If I live in the moment, I live an undisciplined lifestyle that's devoid of consciousness, then I'm going to have a world that is dominated by this entropy that's naturally going to occur because I'm living in the moment and I have no I'm not conscious of the consequences. I'm not thinking about that. And also there's no discipline. It's not like, well, I'm really mad right now, so even though I want to throw this cup of coffee at the wall, I'm not gonna do it because if I do that, then there's gonna be a mess and messes have to be cleaned up. So if you want to talk about, if you want, and so what I want you to kind of do is I want you to look around. It may be at your own life in some cases, because all of us have, we're all tempted by this, right? None of us is perfect. Or look at the lives of others, and I want you to look for that entropy. Entropy, I'm not a scientist, but basically it reflects the randomness and chaos and whatever that happens. And I believe that wealth is to some extent devoid of that, right? Wealth has a structure. It's not messy. You're getting the dollar bill and you're not just throwing it up in the air like they do at the club. You're taking your dollar bill and you're putting it in a bank account. You're putting it into an investment account. You're putting it into a little financial bucket. And then you got a nice, neat little bucket that's got $1 million in it. And the guy next to you has been making it rain at the club and pouring bottles of liquor in the air, right? You're not the same. You're not going to end up in the same place because you're not operating by the same rules of the universe. You're not making the same choices. You're not putting yourself in. There's no sacrifice in just doing whatever I feel like doing in the moment. So I would encourage anybody that wants to be successful, wants to have a successful family, that wants to have wealth, study those cultures that really value discipline, sacrifice, and consciousness. Study those cultures where they say, no, 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 I know you want to, hey, I know you want to get with her because she's cute, but son, that's not good for you. Yeah, yeah, I know you're feeling mad right now and you want to go off and punch your grandma or whatever it is, right? Or go to the mall and spend money because it's burning a hole in your pocket, but you can't do that. We're going to take this money, we're going to invest it over here. We're going to respect grandma, right? Or whatever it is, right? Cultures that operate like that, they tend to have the most wealth because those spaces are devoid of the kind of chaos and entropy that you might see in a community that's a little bit less structured. There has to be some degree of structure there. So I ask you this, and this will be my question for today, is what is your structure? What values and principles do you believe in? What do you live by? Where do you stand? What do you want to have money, but do you have a plan? Are you making a sacrifice? You want to be healthy, you want to look good, but are you making a plan? Are you making a sacrifice? You want to 2025, you want to lose weight. What's the plan? It ain't gonna happen by accident. That's it. I'm gonna stop talking. Um, I do have a book. If you're looking for a plan, it's called The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power. You can get a copy of my book if you go to drboycebooks.com. That's our Black Wealth Mastery store. You can use the code morning123. That'll give you 20% off. For a little while, we did the big discount, but now that was only for 24 hours. So if you go to drboycebooks.com on checkout, use the code morning123, all one word, morning123, and you get 20% off anything in the store. And the book's called The Ten Commandments of Black Economic Power. And there's actually flashcards that go with it so that your kids can learn the concepts as well. Also, if you want to join us for class every day, feel free to. Someone says, please keep talking. Two of y'all said, keep talking. Keep talking. I can't talk all day now. But I appreciate that. Thank you for wanting to see. Y'all gotta go talk to my kids. When I start talking to my kids will be like, "Will you ever stop talking?" Right? So you know how the kids are. Kids ain't got no damn respect. They gonna appreciate this one day though. But anyway, and if you ever see my kids, tell them like go up and just say, "Gosh, I just love hearing your dad talk," and but that'll help them like because people don't be appreciating nothing. But anyway, the other thing too is my wife, is a really tremendous therapist. She's a licensed therapist and she trains other therapists. She does a book club on Sundays for relationships. She's really good at that. That's her science. If you want to join that, text the word love on your phone with the word love to the number 87948. So pull out your phone, text the word love to 87948. If you want to join us in class and you don't have the link to join for class, text the word morning, morning, to the phone number 87948. So text morning to 87948. So later on in the week, we're going to also do stock market training as we do every single week. This year, I want you to know 2025, because, I just had this thing. Mama done went to heaven, so now I got a teammate on the other side. So I want y'all to know that my meditation has been to level up. I'm going to level up. I can already tell you right now, the old Boyce Watkins that you knew in 2024, he is dead. I had to go and bury him next to my mama. And there's a new Boyce Watkins, the 2025 version of Boyce, and he's a different guy. And he's going to kick ass take names. And we're not taking second place to white people. We don't do that up in here. We are the leaders. We are the canaries in the mine. We are the beacons of light. We are in our community, in this space. We are going to be the greatest wealth builders on the entire planet. I have the skills to help you get there. Other people have skills as well. Listen to them too. But I'm going to show up with you every single day. This past year, we did probably 300 and something of these lectures. We're gonna do it again tenfold in 2025. So let's go get it. It's our year. We're here to dominate. Make your plans, set your goal, be disciplined, be smart. Don't listen to no idiots. Listen to yourself, listen to God, take it to the next level. That's how we're going to do things. All right. So God bless you. Have a great day, everybody. And I will see you all tomorrow.